So the Boston Celtics are officially the first team to get out of the first round in these playoffs after sweeping the Brooklyn Nets yesterday. And it was a sweep that we all just wanted to happen because we're just sick of the Nets melodrama, the Ben Simmons drama, the Kyrie Irving drama, etc., etc. Just want to say nothing can unite fan bases to root for the Celtics all together than the Brooklyn Nets, but that's where we are. And there are a few things, obviously, that stick out to me about this series, and we will talk about some of those things, but the main thing I want to highlight in this video is that Jayson Tatum kind of took Kevin Durant's lunch, ran with it, and then ate it in a secluded area. Jayson Tatum was the best player in this series. He was dominant from the first game. Great two-way play in this series, specifically on Kevin Durant. And that is the key that I want to highlight today. And yes, I know it's the superstar versus superstar matchup I'm highlighting here, but this is a coronation of Jayson Tatum finally making the jump into becoming a bona fide tier 1 franchise player. To me, he was always hovering around the tier 1.5, the gap between the first tier and the second tier, to where you become a bona fide superstar franchise player, someone you can build your team around and win the championship with. And we all knew Jayson Tatum had that talent. And then this year, he finally made the jump after the Celtics started turning it around after the new year. And then it all coronated into this series. So if you look at Kevin Durant's stat line for this series, yeah, he averaged 26 points, but look at the other numbers that are there. He shot poorly. He shot poorly from 3. He turned the ball over. He had his shot blocked by Jayson Tatum twice in this series. And then when you look at the matchup data that has been tracked by NBA.com, Kevin Durant's struggles made sense. And also, obviously, the film and us actually watching the games, you could see that one, not only Jayson Tatum made Kevin Durant's life hell, but the entire Celtics defense made Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's life absolute hell. I picked the Celtics in 7 because I thought the talent of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving would at least win the Nets 2 or 3 games. But this sweep doesn't necessarily surprise me because I said in my previous prediction video that the Celtics had the personnel to match up against a Nets team that, one, hasn't played together that much all year, and also when your team has 2 perimeter scorers like Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and in Kyrie Irving's case, he's small. Kevin Durant is sort of light compared to the Celtics wings in terms of weight class. The Celtics had the perfect team to just switch everything and make every possible second on the court hard for Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And I'm going to put up some matchup data on here, as I mentioned. Jayson Tatum's numbers when he guarded Kevin Durant were just absolutely spectacular. He guarded Kevin Durant the most out of anybody on the Celtics team, and Kevin Durant's life was the hardest when he was guarded by Jayson Tatum. I mean, the numbers that stick out here to me is 1, the 12 turnovers, the 2 blocks that I mentioned earlier, but he held Kevin Durant to 16% shooting from the field. And I want to give some credit to Grant Williams as well, so I'm going to put up the matchup data. Grant Williams was also effective guarding Kevin Durant and making his life absolute hell. He guarded Kevin Durant for 13 minutes in this series, held him to 18 points, held him to 30% shooting from the field, 0 for 4 from 3. Grant Williams was awesome, and he also forced some of the sloppiest turnovers that I have seen from Kevin Durant in his career probably. Kevin Durant just looked really bad in this series. Jayson Tatum was giving it to the Nets on both ends of the floor, and the Celtics just plethora of defenders really just made life difficult for a Nets team that was small in the backcourt, small at the 3 spot because the Nets would play 3 guards. They are just a small team, and the Celtics' size at every position. When Marcus Smart is the smallest guy in your lineup, in your starting lineup, that's got to spell doom for the Nets, man. I don't know where the Nets go from here, but I should have just stuck to my guns of what I said a month ago. I thought the Nets were starting to become more of a concept than reality. I think Bomani Jones made a funny point on his HBO show recently that the Nets are actually an NFT. But when the Sixers-Nets game happened on March 10th, you were sort of reminded, oh, this is why they were considered favorites before the season started. But then you remember they hardly still played games together. Ben Simmons now has sat out officially for the entire season. And they were more of just a concept, and people were just giving too much benefit of the doubt to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. Not that there's anything wrong with giving the benefit of the doubt to a top 10 player ever, but still, in terms of team, in terms of roster construction, I should have just stuck to my guns. The Nets were never a serious contender, and it's not surprising to me that the Celtics whooped this team's ass. There was a classic game 1. Then there was game 2 where the Nets came out hard. They played defense. They tried their damnedest, but eventually Boston's size, their dominance defensively, and their 2 wings started taking over. Jaylen Brown specifically in the fourth quarter of that game. Game 3 and game 4, the Nets just decided we're not taking one home game. We're going to take both of them and send your ass home. So the Celtics are just dominant defensively. They are cohesive on offense. They know their identity. And really, at this point, the way that the playoffs have been going, the Celtics and the Heat have been the most impressive in the East so far. And, you know, I don't want to mention the Sixers-Raptors series that is still ongoing right now. Or, you know, the Milwaukee Bucks. They kind of fumbled around with the first 2 games a little bit of the Bulls series, but it looks like they're going to close it out in 5. But the Celtics and the Heat have been the most impressive in the East so far, and the Celtics' absolute dominance and dismantling of the Nets. And yes, some of those games were close, but you could just see that the Celtics' size and defense was just overwhelming.